This is Leafs Morning Take with Nick Alberga and Jay Rosehill.
Now we've got a fight started here right off the bat with Rosehill.
30 minutes of live, nonstop Leafs talk starts now.
What's going on, everybody? Happy Monday. A week ago, the sky was falling in Toronto. Not much anymore. It's the Monday edition of Leafs Morning Take, and Toronto's won 3 in a row. Feeling good about life in a new week. Nick Alberga with you at the Golden Muzzy, where you can follow along on Twitter. Once again, no Jay Rosehill today. He'll be back tomorrow, but do not fret. 3 Hits with Rosie's coming up in about 5 minutes from now, and you'll laugh at the ending of it. It's 3 hits, but Rosie wanted to make it 4 hits. So that's coming up in about 5. Remember to subscribe, smash that like button, leave us a review. Don't forget to visit theleafsnation.com for the very latest happening with the Toronto Maple Leafs. And as per usual, lots is happening. You can't go through a weekend without an injury. Ilya Samsonov goes down, so I'll get to that. If you have thoughts, comments, concerns, questions, hit us up in the interactive YouTube chat down below. We'll get to them. I know I prompted everybody if they remembered the loss to the Anaheim Ducks, and we've already had a couple people write in there as well, so appreciate that. Keep them coming, and I'll get to your thoughts coming up later on. The PointsBet Canada Bet of the Day, that's coming up too. It's been an unsuccessful venture the last couple times out, but try again, and I will do so on today's show. Should mention as well, in about 10 minutes from now, the one and only Rear Admiral from the Spittin Chiclets podcast and family will drop by. You could only guess and wonder what RA has to say on the latest happening with the Toronto Maple Leafs. We'll dive into the Boston Bruins. Man, oh man, that's been a massive story in the hockey world over the weekend. Just, I don't know why they felt the need to do this, but they signed Mitchell Miller and then revoke that signing like 48 hours later. So rest assured, I'll ask RA about that coming up later on. There's just a lot to get to, not to mention the Maple Leafs perspective, the rivalry with the Boston Bruins, and just a really, really damn impressive weekend overall for your Toronto Maple Leafs. With that in mind, let's get over the boards. I don't know in my wildest dreams if I could predicted that type of weekend for the Leafs. So on Saturday, on home ice, a 2-1 victory. And the most impressive part about it, was against the Boston Bruins, who are outstanding, have been outstanding. They've won, 10 to 13 games to start the season, 10 to 12 to start the season. Like, it's been an unbelievable start for the Bees. And, Toronto still takes them down. And on top of that, Ilya Samsonov, gets injured, after 40 minutes play, doesn't come back. And Erik Källgren makes 7 stops in relief in the third period. And that was the more impressive part for me, because Toronto takes 2 minor penalties in that period too. And I thought they really, really insulated Källgren all weekend long. And that includes the game against Carolina last night where they won 3-1. They found a way. Like, it wasn't pretty by any stretch, especially the Carolina game, but they found a way. And I thought they did a lot to Carolina what the Canes normally did to their opponents. I thought they were patient. And most important, I think the work ethic is there. Never to question the work ethic of any NHL team, professional franchise, but they had you wondering a bit, I think, in October. And I was just really, really impressed, especially the Nylander goal, especially the John Tavares game-winning goal last night, the presence of mind by Mitch Marner, the play, but Nylander, that was tremendous stuff. And I think that type of stuff, quite frankly, is infectious inside a locker room. When one guy does it, everybody wants to do it, and they want to compete that much more for their team. So I was thoroughly impressed, more so with the work ethic. I think this team has been building to start the month of November, now 3-0. They win that game against Philadelphia last Wednesday. Then they beat Boston on Saturday, and they're building towards something here, which is great to see. Because all of a sudden, as I mentioned, a week ago, the sky was falling. It was finished. They lose to LA. They lose to Anaheim in the back-to-back in terrible fashion. And then 7 days later, you're feeling so much more optimistic about this team. But that is the roller coaster of an 82-game slate. There's going to be ups. There's going to be downs. But you talk about downs, to lose Ilya Samsonov, I think is just massive for me. And time will only tell how long he's going to truly be out of this lineup. But it's so unfortunate because he's off to such an impeccable start, right? I thought he was solid once again against Boston on Saturday. And it's just the worst thing ever and the worst thing imaginable that he actually gets injured, and speculation on my part and everybody watching the broadcast that it happened on the Brad Marchand penalty shot goal, which is just so unfortunate. It really, really is. But again, I wanted to give some credit because I know I've buried him to a degree this season, but Erik Källgren, I think, deserves a lot of credit and respect. Let's not sugarcoat things. He's Michael Hutchinson 2.0. But anytime you can get your third string goalie to win you a couple games, and I understand Samsonov still gets the win and the dub from Saturday's game, but from a Sunday perspective, for Shalgren to go into PNC Arena, that's a tough barn to win in, and they weather the storm early. Like, how many out there saw the first couple minutes and you're like, wow, that Stefan Nason goal was not pretty at all. This team is in for a long, long night. And Shalgren really, really battled after that. Like, I thought he made some good saves in the second period. And as the game got stronger, I thought Toronto got better and better defensively in front of Shalgren. Like, they cocooned him a bit more. And that's the way you need to play, like taking nothing away from the guy. He's not Ilya Samsonov by any stretch. He's not Matt Murray. He's not Freddie Anderson. You need to shelter him. And that's probably the only way you're going to have success. Now, is it sustainable over a long period of time? Very, very unlikely. I think they have to keep the flies off for the next week. There's the expectation, the hope that Matt Murray could join the team as soon as Tuesday for practice. So you love to see that, especially in losing a guy like Ilya Samsonov. But I do not think this is sustainable for Eric Shalgren in fantasy hockey. Don't go out there and run and pick him up. He's going to have his highs. He's going to have his lows. And so far, so good the last couple games. Again, pleasantly surprised. I was okay with winning one game, 2 points out of 4 on the weekend, considering the back-to-back, considering the opponents. But to walk away with both, they have to be feeling really, really good, especially on that plane ride back. And there's no rest. On Tuesday, they have the Vegas Golden Knights, who are a really, really good opponent. And way back when, 7 games ago, Vegas, now winners of 7 in a row, started that win streak against the Toronto Maple Leafs. And that game, pretty much, Toronto didn't show up. So I'm very, very curious to see how the Leafs come out tomorrow night at home at Scotiabank Arena against the Vegas Golden Knights. But again, it's going to be a long season. There's going to be ups. There's going to be downs. Certainly feeling much better about this team a week after I was just royally disappointed to start off last week, calling for everybody's heads. So temper expectations, chill out. It's a long slate. Again, RA of Spittin Chiclets will come by in about 5 minutes for now, but let's get to our feature presentation. I know you all love this segment. Here is 3 Hits with Rosie.
Hoo-wee, what a weekend. Leafs fans must be jacked. I know I am. Number one thing this weekend, are you kidding me, against high-caliber teams, the Boston Bruins and the, who are they called? Carolina Hurricanes. They sweep the weekend and get 4 points in regulation. I mean, who saw that coming after last weekend's debacle on the West Coast in California? But, I mean, you got to be happy about this. I thought the goal would be 3 points. I mean, a dream scenario is 4. Goalie goes down on Saturday. You're riding your 4th stringer, and you get it done the whole weekend. Great sign for the Maple Leafs. They've really kind of put together 3 solid games. So I'm quite thrilled. I imagine everyone is. Lots to talk about, lots to be happy about. Number 2 brings me to Maple Leafs fans. I'm one of them. We got to just chill out on our highs being too high and our lows being too low. I mean, it's the first weekend in November, and we have already built this team up and then tore them down to the foundation after, were we ever even under 500? I don't think so. So just stop looking at this team with a magnifying glass. It doesn't do anyone any good. It just creates more frustration. I promise you, it's the hardest city to win in as far as the NHL is concerned, and the proof is in the pudding. Look at the record since 67, or even the second round of playoffs has been 20 years. Just ride with this team if you're a fan and if you love it, and they got the greatest fans in the world, the most passionate fans in the world. Just ride with this team to the end and hope that once they put all their building blocks together and it's playoff time, they've got it going on. I know you've had a lot of disappointment in that area, but all I can say is ride with your team. They're obviously got some good stuff going on this year, so whether they have some highs and lows as they're figuring shit out, just stick with them. Number 3, that leads me to what needs to happen in the future for all that to go positively. Consistency for me is the biggest thing. Consistency is what this team needs to find. It's been their Achilles heel along with a couple other things as of the last handful of years, but you got to find out how to do this all the time. You can't have that dog shit weekend against mediocre teams in California and then turn it on here for the hardest weekend of the early season. That being said, that problem is a lot better to have than the alternative. I think Mike Johnson said on the broadcast today, this team plays down to the level of the teams they play and up to the level of the other teams. And that's a lot better of a problem to have, where you drop a couple games against shitty teams and then actually beat premier teams. And they beat 2 Stanley Cup contending teams back-to-back weekends with, the deck stacked against them. So huge props to them. And I think they can certainly figure out how to beat those bottom of the barrel teams once they start clicking and firing on all cylinders. And it appears in the last 3 games that they're starting to do that. Number 4. That was number 4. There is no number 4. 3 hits with Rosie. Thanks.
Oh my goodness, how tremendous was that from the one and only Jay Rosehill? That's the truth serum you never knew you needed on a Monday. His thoughts, 3 hits with Rosie, back with you. And again, Rosie back in action, back in the mix, coming up on Tuesday as we welcome in today's guest. He doesn't need an introduction, but I'll do so anyways because I'm a professional broadcaster. It's Rear Admiral from Spittin Chiclets. All right, what's going on, my man?
Nick, what's up, my man? How we doing?
Good. How big do you think the blunt was that Rosie smoked before he did that piece?
Oh, but shit, I slept a little late today. I didn't even get mine in, so at least I'll be paying a little more attention than him, probably.
Man,
he my Monday
that's
wake
amazing.
And bake yet.
Yeah, 3 hits with Rosie, and he does 4. He tried to do 4 at least. But just your general impressions on that game on Saturday. It was tight. It had that playoff feel, didn't it?
It did, yeah. And I don't know how much of the baggage that the Bruins front office gave the team that night may have affected them. But, the team won 7 in a row. Eventually they're going to lose. I'm not surprised that they lost that game in Toronto. I didn't touch it as a gambler. But, I think for Bruins Leafs, it's like, yeah, whatever. It's a regular season game as a Bruins fan. Like, talk to us in the playoffs. But, the Leafs, they got off the schneid. And like you were just saying to Jay, everything's a monster up there. It's like the Red Sox before they won the World Series down here. Every game is bigger than it really is in the regular season. But it was an enjoyable tilt. Toronto certainly outplayed them. Samsonov, it was tough to see him, lead the game after the second period as a Leafs fan, because I think he was one of the best offseason signings. I said it on the show a few weeks ago, a $2 million signing, I think he was, and he was playing great. And now this kid Petruzzelli, I think he's got Petruzzelli rather. He's got an opportunity to have a tremendous story. I mean, we saw that clip the Mollies tweeted out last night. Just a tremendous clip. No matter what team you're a fan of, that's awesome to see a kid in the AHL sign with an NHL deal and have the locker room explode like that. I mean, I don't care who you root for. That was an awesome thing to see. So this kid got an opportunity now, and he can run away with it. So. I mean, if you're a Leafs fan, you probably shit your pants a little because it's another goalie situation. But as an NHL fan, like, this kid got an opportunity. He was playing great with the Mollies. So I'm curious to see what he does with the big club.
Yeah, you just never know. And I think all in all, a really, really impressive weekend for the Leafs. You beat Boston, then you go on the road and take down the Carolina Hurricanes. Yep. I'm just curious from your perspective, being out in Boston, like, what is the perception of the Toronto Maple Leafs? Like, do people take them seriously?
Yes and no. I mean, they are the Leafs. They're obviously a huge market team, but like in the comparison I've been saying for years, the Red Sox pre-2004, like, they're just that little team that could never win, and you're kind of a laughingstock until you do. And that they're probably at that point now. Like, I mean, the Bruins fans, like I said, they're like the little brother. Like, we have no fear of the Leafs right now because the history of the last 10 years, 2013 and every other time we beat them. So it's kind of like, yeah, you can beat us in the regular season, but until they beat the Bruins in the playoffs, there's no real fear about it, and there's certainly none right now with this team, I'd say.
You're a gambling man, RA. In your wildest dreams, could you ever have predicted this start for the Boston Bruins? I know I couldn't, given all the injuries, given Marchand, McAvoy, Lister injury, and this start. Now Swayman's down. Like, it really is incredible, isn't it?
It is, yeah. I didn't think they'd be as bad as, well, not that people thought they were going to be bad, but I figured they'd be, middle of the playoff road. I didn't see them coming out this hot. I think you got to give full marks to Linus Ullmark. He's the guy that, the Bruins signed before last season, and I think they get in the goalie they thought they were going to get last year. And just the overall team. I mean, Hampus Lindholm, he had the benefit of a training camp with the new coach. Montgomery's done an incredible job, which I'm not surprised at. Everything sort of come together, but it's still very early. And, I know we've talked about teams historically peaking early. I mean, we talked about Tampa Bay a couple of years ago. They came in a house of fire, then they get swept by Columbus. So, as a fan, you're like, okay, this is good, but it's like you'd rather be peaking in March or going into April. But at the same time, the alternative is losing. So yeah, you'd rather have your team win 7 in a row. even with this, latest hiccup that sort of come up organizationally, not with the players.
Yeah, don't worry. We're going to get to that momentarily,
Oh
but
yeah,
I want
I
to
know.
touch on the team. Oh my God, what a fucking shit show. But I think from a gambling perspective, and you're heavy into that, you do a great job with the stuff on the podcast too. The futures market has just been so astonishing to watch in the early going in the first 5 weeks, where again, everybody seemed to be discounting the Boston Bruins, and now there's like little to no value in placing any coin on this team anymore, right?
Yeah, it's funny because I go so old school where you used to have to get on a plane to put your futures in, go 2,700
Yeah.
miles west to get your actual futures in, or at least you have a friend out there to put them in. So I'm still of the mentality where I kind of put my stuff at the beginning of the season and not really put them in during the year. So I tend not to look at the futures market. But yeah, any team that comes out at the beginning of the year like this, it's gonna drop. This is actually the time where you should look for teams that maybe come out struggling, like geez, I'm trying to think. Like something like the Rangers, for example. People they
Yeah.
went to the semifinals last year, and they come out a little scuffling out of the gate. They're not as probably good as people thought. This is the time where you'll find value in teams that okay, where's this team going to be in March or April going into the playoffs? So yeah, teams at the front of the line right now, like the Bruins, you're going to get shitty value, but this is the time you poke around. I mean, I remember 2004, and they didn't win the cup, but it was March right before the playoffs. The Calgary Flames at 90-1 to win the Stanley Cup. Now, of course, they didn't win, but if you put $100 on them and they got to the Stanley Cup final, which they did, you got a perfect hedge situation. Of course, I already bet Tampa Bay at the beginning of the year that year, so I actually had both teams in the final. But this is the time where you can find a team that okay, they're not sitting pretty right now, but it's only November. There's still a lot of hockey left, and you can find some weaknesses in the lines that way. I think by looking, but teams slow out of the gate.
Yeah, the other angle I like to take from a futures perspective, and like you, I like to do all my business at the beginning of the season. Like I just can't keep track of this shit during the year. But the
Yeah.
first team to fire a coach, like, dude, there's some teams out there that are struggling. The Ottawa Senators, the St. Louis Blues. Where do you see the first axe dropping potentially here?
Yeah, this this is one of those I've never actually made this wager, and it is a weird thing to
Yeah,
bet on a guy getting get canned. Although you do got to make the addendum that these guys still get paid. They get fired, but they still get paid the life of
true.
their contract unless they take it on the team. Yeah, you know what? I know DJ Smith. I just read his name, like possibly getting fired, and I don't know if he's the problem in Ottawa. I mean, they seem like they're still playing. They're just not maybe getting the desired results. The goaltending hasn't
Yeah,
been brutal, but geez, if I were to fire a coach. Man, I don't. Yeah, now that I said it out loud. I mean, Craig Berube's not going anywhere. Armstrong's
agreed.
already come out. You know what? Dallas Eakins, I guess, is a name you might throw out there. I don't know
Hmm.
what his contract life is right now, but Anaheim. I know they won shootout the other night. I think they won again yesterday. Who they beat the Sharks, if I'm not mistaken. They're a
Yeah.
team that they're not doing what you expect them to, but they're also like no one expected them to do much. So how do you fire a guy when the team's got a shitty roster and no one thought they were going to do anything? So I mean, Dallas Eakins is probably a name I would bet on, but I'm not wishing the guy to get fired. Like, just to clarify that.
Yeah, I always like to preface that too, but it is sort of a betting angle to look at, certainly. And the front runner, by the way, going into this season was Sheldon Keefe. And I think if we spoke a week ago, people would wonder about that, but a 3-game win streak certainly changes that RA.
Yeah.
Let's get to the Mitchell Miller conversation. Not to avoid it, obviously, it's the giant ass elephant in the room. Just an absolute
Mhm.
shit show. Just your opinion on everything that's transpired over the last 72 hours and how much your perception has changed of your beloved Boston Bruins.
Yeah, it's a shit show. There's no doubt about it. I don't like when we get mealy mouth excuses like Don Sweeney. I'm not his biggest fan. I've been on the record with that. His press conference the other day, it was like this guy, like he's obviously defending something he wasn't 100% behind. He said it. This might not be the right call, and I'm not even for it. And it's like, okay, well then who's it from? If it's not the Jacobs, then it's got to be Neely. He's the only guy above him. And then they Neely the not press conference. I'm sorry, the tweet last night. It says, "Well, we
Yeah.
became privy to more information," and it's like, come on, man. Like, I admit I'm biased with Neely. He's my favorite player. I do admit I have a bias there, but it's like, come on. Now I feel like you're pissing on my leg and telling me it's raining out because this information was out there, man. I knew more about this case a year ago because the Arizona Republic did an in-depth story on it. And like, don't unless you really researched it that poorly and you screwed up then that's a bad screw up. Or if you found all
Yeah.
this and thought it was different. I think what the case was, and Neely, I will say he had his presser today. He took his lumps today. I'm not giving him credit for it, but he owned the mistake. He come out, he said we screwed up. He thought, and I think maybe 5 or 6 years ago with these circumstances, maybe the signing wouldn't have been as, I'll say, big of a deal, but maybe the blowback wouldn't have been as bad. I think in 2022, given that this player, picked on a special needs student who was black, and he used racial epithets with him. That's just something people don't have a stomach for right now. Even if he was 14 years old, it wasn't a one-time thing. That was, over a period of years. And, this kid, I don't know what his remorse level is. I don't know that it was high or low. And I know the mom is upset and has every right to be. And I think, her opinion of his remorse, it seemed to get echoed by the media. I think, like, this, I mean, and I'm not defending the kid, but he did his legal requirements. He actually did make that apology in court. I know there's a story out there. He didn't apologize. He apologized to all the other teams. That's incorrect. I mean, I'm not defending him. He made that apology in court. Whether the sincerity of it was real or not, I don't know. But he made his apology. He did the community service. From his legal sense, he did, what he was required. And a lot of times in a criminal case, Nick, the person convicted doesn't talk to the victim. You avoid it. Like, like in any criminal case, like the last thing you're going to do is go near someone you're convicted of fucking with, messing with, and bullying. So, and again, it's not defending the kid. I just think there's a little bit of a gray area there with people. It's an emotional thing where, okay, this kid maybe didn't show remorse to the family. Maybe he didn't reach out on his own, but he read his apology in court. He wasn't required to. He didn't go above and beyond, but he did what was, in a legal sense, he was supposed to. And I think maybe the Bruins thought, well, okay, he fulfilled that, so people maybe will forgive him like we're going to. And that wasn't the case at all. And it blew up in their face. But, like I said, nearly he owned it today. He said, I screwed up. I thought he could get a second chance. It wasn't the right call. I screwed up, and he owned it. So I don't know. I think everybody and can maybe move along. I think the Bruins track record is pretty good on this type of stuff. The locker room, I think Bergeron, Foligno, Marchand, to have 3 players come out and shit on the front office like that, that's, I would say, it's unprecedented, but it's certainly not common. I think the front office felt the brunt of that. And yeah, I think at the end of the day, okay, the team screwed up. They thought, no, I don't think they were going to fool anybody. I genuinely think they thought, okay, this happened years ago. We can forgive the kid. And there's just not an appetite in the public for forgiving this type of thing without, again, if this kid maybe made a statement like Neely did today 6 years ago, 5 years ago, maybe the mood would have been different for him, because maybe he would have shown the quote unquote remorse people were expecting from him. But the fact that he hasn't said or done anything, at least outwardly, people maybe feel he hasn't paid a suitable price. And then you get to the whole Bettman statement, which I thought was a little odd. Because if you asked anybody Thursday, hey, is Mitch Miller eligible to play in the NHL? I don't think anyone would have said no, because, a team renounces his rights. Now, Arizona renounces rights. That doesn't mean he can't be picked up by anybody in the NHL. At least to my knowledge, nobody said anything about it. So then Bettman comes out. Now it's sort of a union issue. Now, the union doesn't want to necessarily go to bat for this kid, but they have to, because that's what a union does. Like, well, this kid, like, who knew he wasn't eligible to sign in the NHL before? Nobody said nothing. And so you kind of get into this gray area with, like, the union stuff. And yeah, the best thing the Bruins to do is cut bait. It's going to be interesting, though, because this kid's going to turn up somewhere. He obviously had a hell of a year, and there's a market for him, whether it's on this continent or another continent. He's going to play somewhere. And I'm curious to see where it ends up. And, and the kid, like, again, I don't know the kid, and he doesn't sound like a particularly good kid. These weren't normal 14-year-old shithead shenanigans. Trust me. I know everyone says I was an idiot at 14. Listen, nobody did this stuff. To do what he did, it was deranged. I mean, to have to pick on the slow kid class. I know it's probably the word people don't say anymore. I'm an older guy. To pick on the slow kid class is an asshole move, anyways. But then to add, you had the racial element, and then having him lick a urine-soaked lollipop. That's just fucked up, deranged stuff. So that's not normal 14-year-old stuff. But I don't know what the penance is. Every case is different. People talk about the kid in Montreal with the Swedish, the sex crime thing there. What, that's Montreal's call. I don't know what the parameters are. If somebody does a public penance, does that lessen it? I don't know. These are questions that general managers and front offices have to answer and decide on. And who knows what the right answer is. And with this Miller kid, I don't know. I don't know what it is, or if he's going to have to go to Europe, or if he's going to play somewhere in North America that's going to let him play, and if he's going to have to come out and say, shit, I'm sorry, I fucked up. And if that's what it's going to take, or if he's going to have to sit down with Gary Bettman. But yeah, the kid obviously still has some work to do in that regard if he's going to play professionally in North America, I'd say.
Yeah, naturally, why was the question for me. And then on top of that, like, the news comes out that Boston doesn't even talk to the victim. Like, you say you do your due diligence for a year and you've been working on this for a year. How do you not talk to the victim and their family, right? Like, that's my question. And number two, I think if there's a positive to gain from here, is that the leadership core, as you reference, as strong as ever and as any in this league, stepped up and said, no, thank you. Like, I think the comments and thoughts right away from Bergeron, who's just a pros pro, Nicky Foligno, like, up and down that roster, I like that they stepped in and said, this isn't happening, right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's what you like to see in you guys and whatever team you root for. Because sometimes athletes can be robots and they do toe the
Yeah.
potty line off. But yeah, it was nice to see those guys step up and say, no, we're not happy with this. We don't want this here. And the fact that Bergeron said no apparently before, and they still went and signed him, it's kind of like, man, like you're not that
Hmm.
certainly front offices aren't going to defer to their captain all the time, but one or two players. But in this case, they probably should have. Now, as far as not reaching out to the victim. I know that's been a criticism. I don't know that that's something I'm going to kick them for. I mean, they may have thought like this kid was already traumatized. We don't want to revisit it. Like it's already been decided in the court. I'm put
Yeah.
myself in the Bruins front office. Maybe okay, this has been decided in court. The legal essence is done. Let's not maybe upset the apple cart with this kid. And I don't know what they would have gleaned by going to him. I mean, they didn't even read
Hmm.
apparently the Google summary on what was out there, but I don't know what they thought. Well, what's talking to him going to do? Like, the kid again, maybe from their perspective, Miller paid his legal, not fine, but he fulfilled his legal obligations as a guilty person. What do we need to talk to the victim for? I guess they don't. They probably felt they didn't need his permission, and I think
Yeah.
all these years later, with where it was been legally decided, I get it. I'm not going to maybe kick them for that, like other people are that not reaching out. I don't know that people always reach out to victims of of past crimes when they're bringing in a situation like this. Again, it's not a role I've put before. I'm not a front office guy, but I don't know. I don't know that that was a huge error that not going and talking to this family from years ago. Maybe they felt they may re-traumatize this family in some way. Obviously, the mother is still very upset. I mean, and rightfully so. I mean, if anyone's
Hmm.
kid got attitude, of course you're gonna still be pissed off years later. But she did an interview. Like I know the story was going on. Oh, that he didn't apologize, and I was like, wait a minute. I kind of dug into it, and she did an interview with the local news station here in Boston, and she said, well, I want a proper apology. And it's like, okay, now you're passing words, but it's like words matter
Yeah.
in a situation because he
Sure.
legally, again, I'm not defending him. He gave the apology the court made him do in court. Again, his sincerity about it, that the magistrate wasn't convinced he was, but he did what he was supposed to. So when she says he didn't give an apology, well, he did the legal required one. Did he do an extra one after that, or a more formal one that she wanted? No, but so you know what I mean. You got to kind of like take the emotion out sometimes and say, well, okay, this kid
Yeah.
did what he was supposed to. He didn't go overboard, but I mean, again, it's a criminal matter. He was convicted of bullying the kid. A lot people just tend to leave their victims alone and, like, if anything, avoid them. So, again, let's not defend the Bruins. They screwed up. But they owned it, and I don't know. I don't think this needs to linger. It's certainly not going to linger in the locker room. I have no fear of it affecting the Bruins going forward. But yeah, they fucked up. They owned it, and I don't know. I think everybody can move on and learn a lesson from it.
Definitely. Amen to that. Just a heavy, heavy story for sure, obviously, with a lot of
Yeah.
ramifications to it. RA, you're the absolute best. We'll continue watching and listening to you. Just keep up the great work, okay?
Thank you, Nick. You do the same, buddy. Good luck with your Leafs, pal.
They'll
So,
need it. Thank you very much. See you, buddy.
see
That's
you, buddy.
Rear Admiral from Spittin Chiclets, the absolute man. And thanks so much for your time. Again, it's just it was a tough conversation to have, certainly at the end there. Just crazy, crazy ass story. Like, honestly, when you look at it, and just why was my lasting question with the Boston Bruins, why they felt the need and why they didn't talk to the victim's family. Like, I know RA disagreed with that, but like, I think that's just puzzling in my world. Nonetheless, many thanks to RA for dropping by. And again, make sure to check out the Spittin Chiclets podcast. I'm sure all of you watching and listening right now are anyways. Meantime, the wrap up is brought to you by our friends at PointsBet Canada. All right, let's get after it here for a Monday. I'm going to look into a game for the Edmonton Oilers. I want the Oilers money line in this one on the road against the Washington Capitals. They're coming off back-to-back disappointing nights and efforts against the Devils in Dallas, especially Saturday afternoon in that one. It's the first of a 4-game road trip, the front end of a back-to-back. They're in Tampa tomorrow. So what I'm telling you is they need this one big time. Charlie Lindgren, the backup, by the way, will start for the Washington Capitals. No John Carlson again. The Caps really, really banged up. They've lost 4 in a row. So I want the Oilers money line. And then on top of that, I'll throw a bonus your way in terms of shot props. Zach Hyman over 3.5 shots on goal. I like that at plus money. Plus 110 is what you're getting it at right now on PointsBet Canada. He's cleared that number in 7 straight games. In fact, he has 35 shots on goal in his last 5. I think it's 35 shots on goal in his last 7. That's 5 a game. And of course, as I tell you that, probably doesn't hit tonight, but that's what I'm going to roll with, especially at that plus money. So the Oilers money line and the Zach Hyman shot prop. As I wrap up this edition of Leafs Morning Take, again, many thanks to RA for stopping by, and also to Rosie. 3 Hits with Rosie was a hit certainly on Friday, was a hit certainly today on Monday, but Rosie will be back tomorrow, and of course we'll tee up the Maple Leafs and the Vegas Golden Knights. Don't look now, but Toronto trying for their first 4-game win streak of the season. So we'll talk on Tuesday. Thanks so much for watching and listening. Take care.